On today's episode of Power Your Profits, we are deep diving into the intersection of culture, leadership, entrepreneurship with my powerhouse guest, Ushi Patel. From launching her first venture in her 20s and now leading Ushi Inc., Ushi has always fused her rich Indian heritage with a bold business acumen. What sets her apart is her revolutionary Seeing Me method, which has transformed the lives of creatives and leaders from Google, Apple, and Microsoft. This is juicy. Ever wanted to build wealth through your authentic self-expression or how to lead with purpose? Ushi's insights will leave you inspired and ready to stay in action. Stay tuned for this conversation that will change how you think about your personal branding, leadership, and turning your identity into your greatest asset.
Welcome to Power Your Profits podcast, your friendly guide in bringing your business revenue to the next level. Listen as host Dr. Susie Carder hears inspiring stories of success from her fellow entrepreneurs and transformational leaders. Prepare to make significant change to your strategies as they unravel the secrets of building multi-million-dollar businesses and the most effective tips on finance, marketing, and sales accountability. If you want to take your first steps towards explosive business growth, this podcast is for you. Without further ado, here is your host, Dr. Susie.
So thank you so much, Ushi, for joining me. You started your entrepreneurial journey in your 20s, girl. What inspired you to take that leap, and how do you combine your passion for designing the business at such a young age?
I mean, I kind of think you're born with a bug, right? But for me,
yes, I want to.
Yeah, well, when I was 5 and all the kids were going as like astronauts and doctors, my dad said that I wanted to borrow his suit to go as a billionaire. And I always I always had this feeling. I mean, at the time I remember, because I had felt that if I was a billionaire, people would listen to me and I could do a lot of things for the kids in India. At the time that was very relevant to me. I was going back to see my grandparents and I would see these kids who were suffering. And so for me, I'm like, oh, I could solve this if I were a billionaire. So as a 5-year-old, I realized I want to be a billionaire. And I think that probably from that point on, I could see that entrepreneurship was a really great way to do it. It certainly wasn't going to be doing what my parents were doing, which was 9 to 5 corporate grind, which, bless them, thank you for giving me everything that I have and doing that. But that was like pre-IPO upside and all that. So I knew that. And then I also, I've always been a designer, an artist at heart, but no one in my world, like in the Indian families, were like, oh yeah, cool, be an artist and designer. So again, my dad was like, you go to business school and you sort out, like, I don't care what you do after, but you need to have that business degree. And it was at a time when, I mean, it was like the perfect mix, right? My artistry with business kind of sets you up for starting your own thing. And I also don't really follow instruction or rules really well. So it was really hard for me to be in like a corporate organizational setting as myself. And rightfully so. They had corporate culture, they had things that they wanted to have people aligned to. And I'm like, that's great, but like, I want to do this. So all
Right.
that was the perfect way to, just start your own thing. And also when you're 20, like, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage, you're not like,
Right.
your expenses
Right.
are low. It's like the best time to try and get in the game,
Right. I love that. Yeah, I started really the same way. I've always been an entrepreneur from early age, because my dad said, you can be whatever you want, just go earn it. I'm like, okay. Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I was that hustler, selling cookies, selling magazines, whatever I could sell to earn some money,
I love it.
did. I
Yeah.
love that just your culture plays a big, right? You were the first generation Indian American. How
Mhm.
has your heritage really influenced your approach on leadership and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, so we have been out of India since my great-grandfather, and then went to South Africa and then came to the US. And what I love about having an immigrant lineage like that is that you just do what it takes to succeed or to make that thing that's in your head or heart happen, right?
Yeah.
And really, in my world, it was always also about the whole family, not just yourself. And so we had entrepreneurship in our blood for a long time. And we also had a lot of work ethic. And I think that combination has been so strong for me. Now, the opposite is also true, to the point where you can also lose your identity, or adopt other people's identity for who you are, because they're all trying to make sense of it. So they start to tell you should be like this or like that. And here's the recipe for success and happiness. And so there was a large part of my life where I followed that too. And it was really part of like my entrepreneurial growing up. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, you get to be in charge of your own life and you get
Right.
to make your own decisions. But really, again, like just growing up Indians tend to be entrepreneurial, not all of them, but it's sort of, by default, almost like here in the States, when people say you're going to go to college, like it's like obviously you're going to have a business or some sort of income stream or multiple income streams. Obviously you're going to solve a problem in the market. That was always in my world. And I think it didn't take me, whereas other people were learning what that was in their MBAs, I was like, oh, I've been around there, like been around everybody's business, been around hotels and
Right.
laundromats and all the things and tech companies my whole life. And that tells you it's possible, right? If your brain sees it, your brain knows, okay, this can happen for me. And I think that's what many gifts from India, but that's one of the ones that I cherish and treasure.
Well, I love it. It's like a perfect segue, girl. You talk about the seeing me method. So what
Yes.
led you to develop this, and how has it empowered leaders and creatives right across any major brand like Google, Apple, and Microsoft?
So the seeing me method came out of, as I was saying, like I was, in this swirl of high achievement on the outside, and finding myself in a moment in my life where I was like, yeah, but where did I go? Right.
Right.
I was doing all the right things. And in the case of who is listening, right, this was like all the right marketing, all the right social media, all the right showing up at all the right parties, all the right outfits, all the
Right.
right. Getting so much right, but not getting a lot real. And I was depleted, and I felt this sense of like aimlessness and scattered energy. And I got to a place where I was like, again, I'm young enough. So I took a year off. And I'm at the time I had a consulting company and I had a product company, and I was able to sell that product company. It was a home decor Indian design company, and take the year off, right? And what I realized in that year was, I'm like, okay, I have to find a way to get back in resonance with who I really am, and to say, hey, this is what's mine, this is what's theirs, this is how the world sees me, but this is how I see me. And that same process that I use at the front end of all my creative processes, which is like this mood boarding, identity design for both companies and individuals, for people who are raising money. I did it a lot for venture capitalists. That same process I did on myself.
Mm.
And of course there's like the details of that, but essentially what happened was, after a year I started to reclaim parts of myself and get back into relationship with me. And it was so powerful in terms of how I was showing up and what I was bringing into my world. And opportunities that were high margin versus
Yeah.
opportunities where I was over functioning, these types of switches were happening. Opportunities where I had to diminish who I was versus opportunities that valued me. So this switch happened in my world. I wasn't, chasing or forcing as an entrepreneur. I was more in this creation mode and designer mode, and I had sort of returned back. So then I thought, wow, if it works for me, let me try it with other people. And so some of the people who were at the helm of those other companies that I had branded for before, let me try it on them. And surprise, surprise, even if your bank account's big and you have lots of followers and you've IPO'd a million companies, you still deal with that kind of like, who am I question, because reorgs happen,
Right.
personnel changes
Who am
happen.
I now?
Who am I authentically now? That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And if you use a system that tries to solve you in a fixed point, you're always going to return. You need something that can iterate with you. And that's what design does, right? Humans are naturally iterative. That's who we are. We evolve. Let's say a reorg happens, and or even if you go from like a junior lawyer to partner, right? Now, all of a sudden, you have to show up differently. But how do you know how to do that? How do you not dim who you are? So that's what the Seeing Me, again, it was sort of experimentally, accidentally came to be. But then since then, it's been thousands of sessions, and I can see the through line of what helps people. And it still astonishes me too. Sometimes I'm like, how did that
Right.
just happen? But that's the genesis of it. And now it's a full-fledged
Business,
operate.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you align entrepreneurs' personal values with their business goals? And why do you think it's so important in today's world?
Yeah, well, so there's a two-part creative exercise to it. The first one is to identify your unique value. Why you? You answer the question, why me, actually?
Yeah.
And any entrepreneur should be doing this for both their company and themselves, which is why do people choose you over all other alternatives, and understanding that source of differentiation. But what happens is most people dwell in the what instead of the why, or the I always say, like, for example, you, it, it's not, it's you like the from this to the this, like, what is the transformation that you're creating for somebody? What is the bridge that you're helping people to cross, right? So it's
Mm,
very easy for me to say my company makes pens. Who
right.
cares? Everybody can make pen, It's like,
Right.
why you? So that is what I call getting in touch with your unique value and naming it and giving language to it and being able to speak to it, right? That is naturally resonant. And a lot of times your unique value comes from your own experience. And I think I was telling you how much I love your phrase profit coach. And you said, well, that was well earned and honed. And that's exactly the point, right?
Right.
You've got a story. It's come out of your own lived experience, plus your skill, plus your gifts, plus your track record. And so it's so easy to see who you are by that phrase, right?
Right.
So that's part one. The second part, which is the visually led part, and that is, you know, visuals are so wonderful at helping you to see what's in alignment and what's out of alignment. And so what I do is I literally take people through a process where they create their own mood board for how they show up in various contexts of their life. It could be whether they're speaking on a stage, it could be who they are in a cocktail, it could be, and these colors start to move them, these symbols, these metaphors start to move them, and then we read them. Like, what does that mean to you? Why did you choose that? What is
Mhm.
that revealing about your persona? And then how does that translate into what you're wearing on stage, or how you're showing up in the boardroom? Because, with both things that I just said, the push out with your value is that, like, oh, that's so self-indulgent and egoic. And then the push out with like authentic identity is like, don't show up with all yourself in the boardroom. Like, it's like hard to manage, but that's
Right.
not what this is. It's like, it's choosing the most authentic and confident you per context. So that's what those two exercises allow you to do. Now, in the case of who you were mentioning before, uh, if you are in a strong, dominant corporate culture, you're likely showing up how that culture wants you to show up day to day to keep your livelihood, to keep your position, right? And after a while, like 20 years, you go like, what the happened
Why
to
am I
me?
here? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually more effective to be in touch with your authentic self and show up in that culture as the you of that culture. You stand out naturally, you get the promotion. So that's why people are catching on to this. It's not about rolling up into your team meeting. I'm like, I'm so authentically me, so I'm going to tell a person off. No, it's about showing up in that team meeting and saying, okay, the me of this is my insight. This is what I want to exert. And all of a sudden people take notice, right? You get
Right.
more yeses. And so that's the point of the method. And the visuals get to bypass the assumptions and mental resistance that you have so that it can reveal the deeper truths of who you are and what you might have in the way. So, and most of these people are, like, oh, I'm not very artistic. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to be artistic. That's not what this is.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I like it because it's not a shtick, it's not a strategy. I mean,
No.
it's a strategy, but not a strategy. Like, when I say strategy, I mean like winning formula, like, oh, let me do these things. It's no, let's really like tap into the creativity and then also tap into, right, what's the uniqueness that you bring versus,
Hmm.
like you said, anybody can create a widget and gidget. Why do I want to, like me, why do I want to hire you? There's a ton of financial people, but I'm not a CPA, right? I'm not an accountant. I'm a, rogue entrepreneur, had to figure out this money thing and went, oh my gosh, this can be fun,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly.
so different because nobody talks about money is fun. Money is so fun. Now,
Right. And yeah, and you have an amazing story as to how you arrived at that and why you say that. And now I want to know you and I want to have coffee with you because
right.
what she said money is fun, huh? Like, let me, that, yes. Otherwise, you just look like the homogenous mess that's out there and like everybody else. And there's no reason somebody's going to choose you if you were like, I can help you with your
Well,
bottom
it's your turn.
line. Yeah,
Right. You're like,
exactly. It's
who
like,
cares? Nobody wants to do that.
who cares? Yeah.
Well, you also talk about personal branding. So what steps should someone take to begin building a personal brand in both the authentic and the profitable? I love that you put those two together.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. A lot of people associate a personal brand with ego or arrogance or not wanting to show off. And so the first thing is that you check the head
Yeah.
and reframe it, right? I really work with people like you have to understand what storyline that you're believing. A lot of that can come out in the book of me, but like what storyline are you believing about why you need to dim and diminish, right? Because we could tactic chase on personal brand. I could tell you, oh, you need to go post. This is what people come to me. Oh my God, I got to post and I got to do videos and I got to be on a podcast and I'm like, yeah, but what's true for you? Where do you want to show
Right.
up? Right. My entire business was always built on referrals, not on social media presence. It was always being willing to, hey, do you want, if you do this for those people, well, I'll do this for your people. Like it was always built on that. It was always built on coming through. It was always built on somebody going, she goes the extra mile. Please call her, not on social media. Right. That doesn't mean if somebody else has a different goal of visibility that I wouldn't recommend social media. So again, for personal brand, I want to understand what is the value that you bring, what do you stand for, and what is the vision you have for yourself, and make sure it's aligned and you're not buying into other people's story. Once you do that, there is like at least have a LinkedIn, people are going to look you up, have some sort of digital presence, have a
Right.
have a great tagline or brand promise that calls people in. Again, Profit Coach is so clear. This is what I do. It's interesting, something like that. Your visual aesthetic, again, people are you have 2 seconds, less than 2 seconds to make an impression, and your aesthetic is gold. I always tell people that's where I work. When it comes
Right.
to actual personal branding, I'm your 2-second girl. I'm going to hone in on what gives you that impression because that impression works for you long after you're out of the room, right? It's one of the greatest assets you could ever have. So that's where I like to swim. And then, of course, there is the like, okay, what's my messaging in LinkedIn? What's my website going to look like? How am I going to get on that panel? What's my positioning? All of that comes into play. But start with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you say it because it's not one thing we do, it's all the things you like. But if you're not clear on who the essence of me, the transparency, the authenticity of me, the results, then you're just mimicking somebody else's strategy, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
what's strange. It's like, no. You are special. The world needs all of us. They need you. They need me. They need a combination, right? Different shapes
Yes.
and sizes and colors. And, people get so hung up. Well, I had a client who was heavy. She's like, they're not going to listen to me. I'm heavy. They're not heavy people in the world. They want to see
Yeah.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
I started what I want to do because I want to see a powerful businesswoman talk about business strategies because I'm a little more seasoned than you, Ushi. I'm just going to say that. So I was back in the
Maybe.
day when it was the old white man talking about money and finance, and nothing's
Yes.
wrong with a seasoned white man, but I was a 20-year-old businesswoman going, I couldn't even relate.
You're listening to another episode of Power Your Profits podcast. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Are you tired of pouring resources into strategies that don't work? Say hello to Dr. Susie Carder, your future fractional COO. With Dr. Susie in your corner, your business can skyrocket to 7 figures and beyond. With a track record of creating thriving businesses, trust that you are in good hands. Head over to coo.poweryourprofits.com and let us put some magic into your business growth. Are you tired of struggling to take your business to the next level? Power Your Profits is the game-changing book you've been waiting for. Dr. Susie Carder, creator of the Predictable Success Method, reveals her proven strategies for explosive growth. From daily operations to marketing systems, this comprehensive guide empowers you to achieve predictable revenue and profit growth. Don't miss out on this invaluable wisdom. Transform your business today. Find your copy at books.poweryourprofits.com.
Right. So I love that we're talking about that. So let's talk about wealth building in our personal branding. Can you share a few strategies for entrepreneurs looking to grow their wealth, but staying true to their authentic self?
Yeah. Well, so firstly, okay, I have to probably you do this in your work too, right? You just define money as fun.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the thing. You gotta like, I would do a seeing me board on money and wealth. I would start there. I would start pulling visuals of what wealth means to you and get into a definition of what it is that turns you on about wealth.
Right.
Right. Because I remember people like, well, you should be doubling every year. You should.
Right.
And then you're like, oh my gosh, why am I overwhelmed? Why am I only inching my way forward? You have to define the wealth for yourself because compensation isn't just money. Compensation is
Yes.
a lot of different things. It's relationships, it's experiences, or not. Maybe not. Maybe for you, it is just money. No judgment, but figure that one out because you're going to pair it with a tactic that may or may not, work for you. So
Well, and
money.
I want people while you're listening to this, think about when you've done that, right? I've done it, right?
Yes.
I'm like, I'm going to do it. And then I'm like, I hate what I'm doing. I loved the people and the work, but the it of it all was just this big burden of why did I create that? Because I didn't know. I didn't have this conversation, right? When we started out. So
Yes.
sorry, I'm
Yeah,
interjecting.
no, that's okay. I love
Go
it.
right
Well, that's
on.
because we're in a juicy conversation. I mean,
Yes.
the other thing is, okay, so now you've got this like almost persona of money and it's being reflected back to you. Part of what happens with the Seeing Me board is that you can take images off and on that don't feel resonant in your body, and that can tell you a lot about what you need to know about how you build wealth and how you look at wealth. Okay. I'm going to give you an example. So I, for the longest time, had a certain car on my Seeing Me board, and it sounds a lot like a vision board. And I looked at this car, it's like, okay, what does this represent to me? And I just was like, not feeling it, not feeling it, not feeling it. Why am I not feeling it? What's going on? So now I have this other car, and
Okay. What's the car though? We have to know the car.
it's the SUV Rolls Royce, which is like in my head,
Yes.
it's an
Okay, girl.
right? It's the old person's rich car. I don't know why I like it, but so then I was like, okay, tell the story of what you like. And I started to
If you're a
tell,
5-year-old wanting to be having to be a billionaire.
and that's the billionaire car. Well, it was more like sturdy, the right
Yeah.
amount of curves, the right amount of, there was like this reliability. There was this like a stature to it. It just felt good. I felt like in command. So now look at the words I'm using.
Yes.
I straight up be like, great, how's that going to translate in how you're building wealth, Ushi?
Yes.
Right? What does that tell you about your strategies? You're not looking for just the money. You're looking for regular cash flow. You're looking for consistent cash flow. That's what I mean by getting really authentic about your goals and what you really want so that you don't start chasing other people's version of that. And that was from an image of a car. And like I have
Right.
no doubt that one day I'll drive that and maybe even look at it and be like, no, that's my dad's. Like it's
Right.
not really. It was just there to tell me this or not, but this like and then also like this sense of like, are you after it for a sense of security or are you after it for creative flow? Like really getting clear, like why do you want it in your life in the first place? Right.
Yeah.
And I know, like, if you're a business owner sitting there, like, yeah, but Ushi, I have to pay my people next week. So come on, give me like a practical tactic of what I can do. I literally would be like, you're going to go do this.
Right.
Right. It's how
Well,
much I
I love it
believe in it.
because if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs, we do these things unconsciously. I love to talk about bringing the unconscious to the conscious because
Yes.
for years, even when I didn't have any money, I'm like, I want this Mercedes. Here's why I want this Mercedes. I had it for 10 years, right? I paid it off, but it was the thing for me that I would walk out and go, I am. successful. I am. And it wasn't so much the car, it was the feeling I had in the car,
Exactly.
right?
That's
That
exactly right.
propelled me. And I'd pull up to meetings and I'd pull up to, events and stuff that just had me my own sense of accomplishment to go, if I can do this, Ushi can do this. If I
Yeah.
can do this, my kids can do this, right?
Yes. And it's all a signal. Like that's also what I'm asking you to do. I do think wealth is both created and attracted, right?
Yes.
And so what do you want to signal, right? If I wear something that create, okay, handbags are another example. Another sort of can be typically thought of for a woman as a material object. Do you know how many conversations a great handbag can cause that open the
Yes,
door for
I
you?
do.
Do you know how tall I can stand? So it's not about, it's not here. I'm sitting here saying, okay, go amass 10 handbags. And then all of a sudden you're going to meet your new client. But I kind of am telling you that. Like, I am telling you that you signal people and you start to show people who you are, and then you resonating with you, they resonate with you naturally. And that's the thing of why you want to have these objects of wealth, so to speak, in your world. And they tell you a lot about yourself too,
Right.
right? What you surround yourself informs how you stand, right? Like I always say that too. I'm like, I'm not telling everyone to go get a red heel, but the way the red heel makes me feel when I get on stage to give a talk, I
Right.
just feel, I feel myself. And that's the whole point of how you show up. And that's when more clients come. That's when somebody starts to say, hey, I didn't realize this, but maybe you should come in on this. Or,
Right.
that's when your business starts to grow. So I feel like wealth, there's a push out to objects thinking like, oh, I'm going to be selfish or self-indulgent or what is it, materialistic. But if money is energy, that object's energy. And so if you know how to flow with that energy and let that energy live in your world, then you will naturally let money live in your world. And
Right. There's so
yeah,
many ways to do it inside of a budget, right? You don't have
yeah,
to pay retail, right? Let's be creative to go, what are those things that I need for my identity, to maintain who I am? And we're not saying go be broke, right? Go spend all your
nope,
money frivolously on stuff you can't afford to be a fraud. That's that when imposter syndrome comes in. So how
yeah.
do you balance maintaining first the culture and identity and then evolving in this competitive world of entrepreneurship? How do you balance it? Because that's big right now in all of our lives. Work-life balance. How do I not get sucked in? And then how do I bring my culture? Because that's still kind of taboo, right? My children are ethnic, and there's still this perception in business and to go just be you. So how do you,
Yeah.
as a very powerful woman, you can hear, right? It's not anything that's imposter. It's just comfortable in your skin.
Yeah, I'm always like, am I? I am, huh?
You are, yes.
Because I have my tool. I know somebody the other day asked me, like, oh, you seem to have it all together. I was like, listen, that's not what's happening here. What I have are tools to come back home. And
Exactly.
that's what it really is. Look, I think that there obviously is still a systemic bias. There are all these things, but I made a decision, like, am I going to make that powerful? Like, okay, it's there and I'm going to leverage who I am and the uniqueness of what I am. And it doesn't really affect me. Who knows what people are really deciding, but at least face to face, I feel like I command the respect of a strong entrepreneur because I see myself like that now. I didn't always,
Right.
right? I didn't always. I don't know that I think that there is a state of balance for an entrepreneur. I think that there is a state of integration. And what I mean by that is that, like, if I am, again, aligned with my identity, there are times when this is totally off kilter. I will say, not working out today. I'm going to go take a hike in the morning, or I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take an extra long shower. And because I'm an entrepreneur and I own my own schedule, I can do that.
Right.
Right. But then that does mean that sometimes on Friday night, I'm not going out, or I'm who goes out? I have two young kids, but like I'm not I'm watching Frozen again. Um, um, but I'm able to sit with my kids or not, or maybe I'm working late. So that's what I think happens for me is integration. And the times like I feel like I'm old enough now where my body's like, oh, you're not doing what you're meant. You're just like, you're burning you're doing all these things. And it tells me much more quickly than in my 20s. I used to stay up till 2, 3 overnight, no problem. But now no brain comes the next day. And, and I love my
Patience
clients.
is limited, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love my clients. I mean, part of my creativity is that I have to keep it integrated and I have to be aware because that's what they're hiring me for are my ideas and what I
Right.
can bring to the table. So it's part of the, as you were saying, the wealth and the thing that I sell, so to speak. Yeah. But I mean, like, yeah, I always said to myself, like, am I going to wake up one day and think like, okay, cool, I'm here.
Right.
I've
Well,
arrived.
I learned early on as, an entrepreneur, because we do have that mom guilt, and how do I balance those priorities? One of my great coaches said, Susie, it's all about quality versus quantity, because you can spend all the time in the world and you can be pissy, cranky, not want to spend it with them. So instead of beating yourself up because you're not there all the time, let's really look at how do you integrate you and them, and it's fun, and this time is memorable, right? And
Yeah.
take lots of pictures, right? That's what she was.
Take lots of pictures. Oh my gosh.
At sporting events, I was there, because they remember you not being. I'm like, oh no, look, I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's so true of everything, right? Like I have been in clients interactions where I haven't felt there and they don't go anywhere. Or sorry, prospects, right?
Right.
But I've been in prospective clients where I'm like, "Oh God, I don't really have an agenda to close this deal and I'm just going to sit and listen." And it's been magical what I've been able
Yeah.
to create. Because this thing that you're talking about, presence, is really what it's about, right? There's the presence of you being present and here, and then there's your personal presence, but they're both so linked.
Yes.
And yeah, like that you can be reading, I could be reading a book to my 5-year-old and he's like, Mom, are you here? And I'm like, no. He's like, I can tell because you just read the same page twice. I'm like, okay,
Isn't that
so
awesome?
yeah, it's awesome, but I'm also like, you're 5, slow down. But yes, he calls me out on my lack
That's
of
an
being.
old soul right there calling
He
you
is. Oh, he is. He for sure is. Yeah. And then you have to ask yourself, like, here's the thing about what is interesting. I work with both people in the corporate and entrepreneurial sphere. Sometimes there's this myth in the corporate world that entrepreneurs get to have all the fun and they have no boss and life is so cool. And I'm like, yeah, except for you don't have a C-suite who is in
out. Except
charge
for
of
there's
your,
no boss.
yeah. You
No
don't
one's
have
helping you
somebody.
do it.
Yes, nobody's going to be like, "Oh, you can't make your personnel budget and go find the money." Like you have to go make up that $500,000 that you're making a year in a salary
Right.
in revenue, right? So it's a different kind of grind, so to speak. So like make no mistake, it's there,
Right.
right? It's just that when you're an entrepreneur, you might be more passionate about the grind because of what you are leading yourself to or what you're trying to build, but and then there are people who are in corporate, who are entrepreneurial, who get the same feeling because they're turning an organization around, right? So
Yes.
it's all how you define it, it's all how you see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been your most valuable lesson you learned in this journey, and that it shaped your approach to leadership and business today?
Oh yeah, so you don't take advice from unhappy people.
Amen.
It's like I have to wear it. Yeah, I think that when you don't, if you're not resonating with yourself and you think other people know better. This is not to say you can't have feedback and you can't go and learn. Of course you do. But there's this place where we drop ourselves and what we know because so and so has whatever we deem as better than us,
Right.
right? So there's many, many, many times, especially in the realm of marketing and branding and ads, where I spent a ton of money because of my intimidation of ads, digital
Yeah.
ads, right? And my instinct was like, you don't need to do this right now. Or my instinct is that's not a good ROI or ROAS as they tell like, and that person across from me painting a picture like it is, and me going like, wait a minute, you know? And so, and it almost feels like you're lighting your money on fire, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
listening to people or trying to follow a formula that doesn't feel right. And I said, don't take advice from unhappy people. And what I mean by that is that what I started to discern was, wait, let me look if I like who they are. Let me look if I like their business results. Let me look, do they have business results the way I want them? So what I
Right.
mean by that, there's a lot of people who will espouse a certain formula or blueprint and say, okay, this is going to be successful. But then you look at the way they live their life and you're like,
No. Yeah.
right. so that congruence, right? Um, and yeah, that was such a hard lesson. And
And expensive, but we all have to do it,
expensive.
right? We
Yeah,
have to
well,
do it to a certain degree. There is that, like, no, that is not it. Like I always say, there's a ton of charlatans in the industry.
yeah.
And, there's a lot of people that talk about they can do it. And we're looking for the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail is within us, right? Yes, you need coaches.
Mhm.
Yes, you need guidance and mentors and other strategies, but really the Holy Grail is in you to go, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And it doesn't matter
It's
what
not
the
right.
promise is, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that happens. Everything hasn't been like a peachy journey for me.
No, it's
I had a,
entrepreneurship.
right. Yeah, it's like this is exactly where I've like, the rigor of what you learn. I heard somewhere the other day, and I cannot remember who, I can't quite I want to give credit, but it was like you you put the goal out there of becoming a millionaire, not so that you become the millionaire, but because of who you become by trying to achieve being the millionaire.
Right.
And that was like not the way it was said. Go find the quote. It's very moving and touching, but that's the gist of it, right? And so these life lessons or these entrepreneurial lessons, like I joke about how hard they were, but ultimately I was just walking the other day thinking to myself, I love who I've become and who I'm becoming because of them. But
Mhm.
I've had a few I chose the wrong business partner moments in my life. And I remember that the personal responsibility I had in it, many things, but one of the core things that I seem to have to keep learning over and over again until now. Now I'm like, oh, that's what you're
Yeah.
doing. Is that place in which you diminish what you know and who you are because maybe the other person has the magic pill or the thing that you perceive you need, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like a subtle desperation, like, oh, that person knows this and that's why I need them. Now, for me, I don't know how many listeners are like that, but for me, it was always in the realm of finance. Oh, that person understands balance sheets better than I do. They understand banking better than I do. So I gave away my knowledge of money and how I like to flow money and work money and grow money to that person because they had a finance background, quote unquote,
Right.
only to realize it created a whole lot of business debt. It created a whole lot of obligations that we had to come through on. It created a whole lot of holy cow, well, we did what?
Right.
And I can be mad all I want at that person, right?
I
And
chose.
I was, but
Right.
I chose it. I chose to check out. I chose to be intimidated by the thing called money at that time. And
Yes.
so that's the thing is like I was like, oh, like okay, yeah, like it doesn't sting anymore because I've processed and I've therapy and I've worked on it and coaching
Yeah.
and I've done all the things. But at the time, man, it did it burn. And if you look at that person's still managing their business like this
Right.
to this day.
And then you look at, wow, that could have been me 10 years later, 2 years later, whatever the number was, right? Whatever that lesson was, So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was see. So what's next for you, right? Are there any new projects, ventures you're excited, that we should keep our eye out for?
Yeah. So I have a book coming out in
Okay,
2025.
congratulations.
Yes. And it's in the spirit of knowing now how much and having the data of how much the Seeing Me method can work for people and wanting to get it to a wider audience. Um, that excites me. I like this idea that anybody anywhere. Like the other day, somebody's like, Ushi, I don't want to build a brand, but can I use the See Me method to redesign this room in my house? I'm like, yes, like that's what I want is that people start. This is the era of authenticity. You get to like never before has it been easier to be yourself
Yes.
in a situation. And I think that like I get so moved by like the people who light up and make their signature mark with the Seeing Me method and who they get to help. So I want it to be like what's that book 50 Shades of Grey that like randomly everybody
Right.
was reading. Like I want it to be like that. I want it to be like people get together and do their Seeing Me boards and I want them they do it as a group of friends or they do it with a cocktail in their hand or like and kids. I want kids and college grads. So that's the spirit of the book is that get it in more hands that maybe not necessarily building a brand or a business, but they are building their life, you know?
Yeah. So
Um,
if someone wants to play with you, hire you, work with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? What do we do?
Yeah, go to my website, ushi-inc.com. There's a free training there, and that training gives you the lay of the land. It also shows you how you can do direct work with me. It also shows you how you can do the self-guided virtual course. It's got all the ways in which to access the Seeing Me method. Or also I can come in and do a team workshop. I do that often too. So head over to my website, say hi to me on LinkedIn just because that's the
There.
easiest way to connect. It's Ushi Patel. And I'm always dropping some goodies there. And come.
Yeah, come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what I love is I know we know someone that needs this conversation. Maybe it's not right for you right now in this moment, which is right for everyone. I think I've been through this transition, several times having to reinvent myself, right? Who am I
Yeah.
now? Who am I now? Who am I now? And to do it on your own, it's hard, right? And
Yes.
to go, what can I take from this conversation and how can I play? So as we wrap up this incredible conversation, Ushi, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience, right? Your journey is so powerful. And it reminds us to stay committed to our passion, our purpose, and our authenticity that leads us to an extraordinary life and, more importantly, extraordinary success. Whether it's building wealth, developing your leadership, or finding ways to embrace and express your unique self, Ushi has given us some priceless insights, right? Make sure you check her out, Ushi Patel, and it's USHI Patel.
Yeah.
And her
Yes.
innovative work at UshiInc.com. And don't forget, keep turning your power into profits for this game-changing conversation. Until next time, we'll keep pushing the boundaries. Share this on your social media. Ushi, you are a delight. You are a gift to the industry. You are a gift to women of all ages, right? Thank you for you just giving me your time, right? And sharing
Yes.
your expertise with our tribe, our community. I know they're going to love, 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 love you.
Thank you. How
You're
beautiful.
welcome.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to be here, and I wish everyone well in their endeavor. Yeah.
Yes, we appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Power Your Profits podcast. Let these building blocks from today's most successful industry leaders equip you with the necessary resources and tools to finally establish the highly profitable business of your dreams. Want to hear more? Listen to more episodes at www.poweryourprofitspodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. Now is your time to rise to the top of your game. So be sure to catch our next episode. Until next time.